I believe Resident Evil 9's story is the result of a build-up Capcom has been doing for over 10 years. It sounds crazy, but there are several clues and hints in various Resident Evil games that I believe have been planned for this massive sequel. From Capcom heavily pushing Resident Evil Outbreaks canon to unexplored story elements from Resident Evil 6 and Resident Evil 8. Here are the various setups Capcom has done that might get shown in Resident Evil 9. Let's get the obvious one out of the way and start with Alyssa Ashcroft. Alyssa Ashcroft is the mother to Grace Ashcroft, the main character of Resident Evil 9. You can also see Alyssa in Resident Evil 9 in some of those flashy moments. Alyssa, of course, is one of the characters who was first introduced in Resident Evil Outbreak. In Resident Evil 7, you can find a file from her that shows that she was investigating the area around the Baker's home, more specifically the disappearances. Capcom giving a Resident Evil Outbreak character this much attention is absolutely wild, and it really shows that the Resident Evil 7 Easter egg could have meant something more. However, the Outbreak references don't stop there. Let's go into the remake games of Raccoon City. In Resident Evil 2 Remake, you can find a direct reference to another Outbreak character named Rita. She works for the RPD. Now, during the initial attack, there were only a few RPD survivors left: her, Marvin, David, and Elliot. In Resident Evil 2 Remake, you can find Rita's desk with her name tag sitting on top. Also, one of the locker codes is MRG. These are the initials of the RPD officers: Marvin, Rita, and George. This shows without a shadow of a doubt Rita's story did happen. In Resident Evil 3 Remake, which showed the first moments of Raccoon City in a state of panic, you can walk up to a police car and you can hear someone on the radio saying this.
RPD dispatch, this is 153. I'm trapped in North Garden with 3 civilians. West side, cafeteria, back of the kitchen. One of us is injured and immobilized. Please advise.
A lot of people believe that this is Kevin describing the first scenario in Resident Evil Outbreak. Him, 2 other players, and the injured Bob. However, there are some that disagree with the description, saying it sounds more like the level in Wild Things. There are also locations in Resident Evil Outbreak that were mentioned in Resident Evil 3 Remake, such as Zap the Beer, which is first shown in Outbreak File 2, and Elephant Restaurant, which is also in the level Wild Things. There's also a small reference to Jay's Bar. It's clear Capcom really wanted to show a lot of Outbreak references in Resident Evil 3 Remake, but Capcom's acknowledgement actually extends beyond the games. There's a very small detail. A few years ago, Capcom created a post and a timeline called Look Back on Resident Evil, which was a straight up timeline of all the games, all the events, what's canon and what is not. However, if you continue scrolling down, you get to Resident Evil Outbreak taking place at the same exact time as Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3. Resident Evil 7, Resident Evil 2 Remake, Resident Evil 3 Remake, and this post are all back to back to back to back. 4 crazy details that keep showing that Resident Evil Outbreak is canon and it did take place. We are almost done with Outbreak, I swear, but there's one more thing I want to mention, and that is the ending of Outbreak File 1, which showed that there were some tests going on after Raccoon City was completely destroyed. Now the big question is, why? Why did Capcom go so far out of their way to include Outbreak references in about 3 games and a whole website post? I think it's to connect Resident Evil Outbreak's ending to Resident Evil 9, and it was already revealed that we're going back to Raccoon City. Outbreak's ending is so important to Resident Evil 9 because it showed that testing is still going on, that there is an active US presence there, which is also supported by Resident Evil 6 and Resident Evil 9's actual synopsis, but I'll talk about that in a little bit. There are some debate amongst some fans, and someone even commented this on my last video. The voice at the end of Resident Evil Outbreak File 1 is Nikolai. He is referred to as the head office. Now the point of contention when it comes to Nikolai is that Resident Evil 3 Remake, he died, right? Unless he found a way off. We didn't see a dead body technically, but there was no way he could have escaped the city in that short period of time. But if he did, then that would add to Outbreak being more canon. Some other things that I noticed was in Outbreak's ending, it showed that there were several bombs that happened to completely destroy Raccoon City, but in Resident Evil 9, it was showing only one massive bomb went off to destroy the city. In Outbreak's ending, the entire city is completely decimated. There is nothing left. However, in Resident Evil 9, it shows that the bomb did destroy Raccoon City, but there are still structures that remain. Capcom could be changing some of the minor details from Resident Evil Outbreak's ending to match up with what we saw in Resident Evil 9. Now, if you have your doubts, let me ask you this. If all of this was not intentional, then what was the point of giving Alyssa, a random Outbreak character, a note in Resident Evil 7? What was the point of adding additional Outbreak references to other characters and their stories in remake games? And what was the point of having Grace being the daughter of that same Outbreak character who left that note in Resident Evil 7? If you have some thoughts, let me know why in the comment section down below. But overall, that connection is there and it is very strong. Now, we are done with the Outbreak references, but we're not done with the video. We have to talk about Resident Evil 6 next. To begin, here is the official synopsis for Resident Evil 9. Grace prepares to finally face the past and makes her way to the scene, but this one case leads to uncovering the hidden truth behind the outbreak in Raccoon City, the biological disaster that shook the world. This is something that was first explored in Resident Evil 6 with a character called Derek Simmons. Simmons was the one who gave the order to destroy Raccoon City for two reasons. One reason was for the good of America, as this was a national security threat, while the other reason was to destroy any evidence of the United States of America's involvement. Simmons was a part of another organization called The Family, not to be confused with the Bakers, but this organization that Simmons was a part of was said to make major changes to the world in the background and has very powerful members and has existed for centuries. Since Simmons was the National Security Advisor, he was promoted as head of the organization. The organization, as far as we know, still exists in the Resident Evil universe. If Grace is uncovering the mystery of Raccoon City's destruction, Simmons and the family must be mentioned in some way. It's completely unavoidable. Also, it's heavily rumored that Leon is going to be the playable character in Resident Evil 9. Leon is one of the people who dealt with Simmons in Resident Evil 6. The connections between Resident Evil 6 and Resident Evil 9 are very, very strong. There was one scene with Simmons after he transformed where he's reaching out to a helicopter and the helicopter abandoned them. This helicopter might have held some of the members of the family, which means that they still exist within the universe. So that hooded figure that we saw in the trailer, is he a part of the family? Now let's talk Resident Evil 8. Resident Evil 8 revealed that the BSAA started to create bioweapons to be used on the battlefield, but unlike mutated, horrifying monsters, these were trained military bioweapons. Jeff Keighley during the Game Awards said that this was not just a horror game, but also action.
Today's reveal isn't just about survival horror. Expect high-stakes cinematic action too, with much more to share soon leading up to its launch on February 27th, 2026.
So are they doing what RE7 did? Grace is taking the spot of Ethan, dealing with the slow, horror, claustrophobic side of the game, while another character is taking Chris's spot, someone to deal with the action side. Either way, this is an action game and could be the reason why Capcom left Resident Evil 8's ending so wide open. Why we never saw the confrontation between the BSAA and Chris. So that's all from me. I think that Resident Evil 9 is being set up, and it's being set up by all of these story elements that didn't really get fleshed out. I think that the family is going to be involved because it has to be if they're talking about the destruction of Raccoon City, some type of conspiracy, and they have to at least address Resident Evil 8's ending. Also, they made Outbreak so important over the years nonstop to have an Outbreak character have a main direct story influence in Resident Evil 9. I think all of this is just one big setup for an epic story that they want to tell. Speaking of setups, I believe the BSAA is going to play a major role in Resident Evil 9. In fact, I believe that they're the ones responsible for either capturing or killing Alyssa. If you want to hear my thoughts on that, click the video on your screen now. I'm going to be out of here. Thank you guys and girls for listening. Deuces.